Today, we do a little bit of an AAR where we playing as Bohemia and attempting a semi-world conquest. And of course, if you guys are going to pre-purchase EU5, consider using code Playmaker. But with that said, let's get into it. We're going to group the first two ages together because the second age starts a couple years into the game. We started as Bohemia because I think Bohemia is the best nation in Europe. And I kind of wanted to semi-try like what World Conquest would feel like, but I also wanted to test how the age tree has been changed. A couple of months back when I was at Access, I was able to form the age tree by 1410, I want to say, something around that. So I was hoping that, that had been changed and it had been adjusted a lot. Just to note, the age tree is being worked on a lot. So a lot of what I'm talking about is going to change. Of course, it's a work in progress build. All of the normal warnings for you guys. And remember, this is just my opinion. I'm just one person with an opinion, so don't overreact to one person with an opinion, right? I'm looking at you, Reddit. So we start off, and it's pretty simple. We just want to grab some elector backing, I guess you could say. The point being is that we're going to ally to, or not really ally, but just improve relations with 4 electors. In EU5, instead of having a majority vote, you have to have 4 or more. What I mean is that in EU4, if you had 2 votes and the next person had 1, you could be elected, where in this game, if you don't have 4 votes, the H tree will just like stall and no one will be the leader for a while. But anyhow, so we're just improving relations early, and the Black Death happens pretty fast. And so it's not hard to be elected emperor as Bohemia, especially because you're kind of the strongest anyways. So you have it's pretty easy for you to get voted for, more or less. So sometime during the Black Death, I think the emperor dies, which I think is like Bavaria, and then we get elected. And one thing to note for the Black Death is that you want to isolate the court from the Black Death because you don't want your ruler to die. You get a lot of authority based on how good your ruler is, and your ruler gets better over time. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but it seems as though they just kind of passively, your ruler gets passively better. So the longer they live, the better. Our first reform is, I forget the name of it, but it kind of sets up the reforms. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to do the first reform. And I think it's something like Call the Diet, maybe. Golden Bull, that's the one. So you have to enact the Golden Bull first, is your first thing. And that will establish the laws that you can, eventually change and work through. We're not going to cover every little thing about the revoke, but kind of just how the Bohemia works. So at the start, Bohemia gets an option to get a PU on Poland, which I'll take the event because it moves me towards belligerent. And if you guys don't know, belligerent equal to war score costs later, if you want that. And it's a world conquest, so I'm kind of like, okay. You can't really see that with the text, sorry. So belligerent's a value you might want if you're doing a world conquest, which we're semi-attempting to do. My main strategy is kind of really like EU4. More or less, I just want to attack people that aren't in the HRE and then kind of expand the HRE. So I'm like going to go over here, mostly, because these are just my easiest paths to expand the HRE. And when you add provinces to the HRE, it has to be bordered just like in EU4. I think the first one I want to go after was like Poland. And what I'm going to do is just turn every state that I get into fiefdoms. This is a common strategy I use like every time, but just, you're just building a bunch of fiefdoms out of Poland, something like this. And I'm kind of just saying like, AE is just a number, and I kind of just ignore that as a mechanic. So if I like co-belligerate, or I don't even bother co-belligerating, but if someone else is in the war, I would take their land as well. But the idea is that I'm just trying to make as many subjects as possible. But before I make them subjects, I'm going to add them to the HRE. So I'll take the land and the war, and then go to each province and add to the HRE. And unfortunately, there's no like add all button, and it's very tedious. It would be like for those that you play EU4, like adding parliament seats. So it's kind of painful to do. I hope they add a add all button, but currently there's no such thing. I noticed this weird interaction that if you say Lithuania is Orthodox and you add them to the HRE, when you release those subjects, they're going to be the wrong religion because that's just how it works, right? But the way that I notice is that if you release a fiefdom, like a custom subject, you will get no authority. It'll still say like, oh, you brought a prince back to the right faith or something, right? But if you release a normal subject, like let's say like Lithuania themselves, right? The game thinks that they rejoined the faith. I think this is like a reformation mechanic, but I'm not going to use this. I'm just saying like I think this probably isn't working intended because like the game thinks that you've returned them to the faith and it's giving you authority. Parliament CV is super strong in the current version. I don't know if they're going to change that. I'm abdicating for them to change it. So it's kind of like you have imperialism, right? So I'm able to take a lot of land from Poland, and then we're going to go after the Teutons. The Teutons actually have like HRE land, and to note, when you take HRE land back, you get 10 prestige. It's not like it matters a lot. It's just how it works. You don't get authority. Throughout the first age, we're kind of just like expanding the HRE and then slowly passing reforms. Kind of just like making a bunch of the subjects. We already start with a lot of subjects too, so you can see that we're like really starting to get a lot of subjects. But the emperor gets an increased subject capacity. So we go through the first stage, and that's kind of the You know, that's kind of what we're doing is passing reforms and just kind of expanding the HRE with the idea that once we form the HRE, we're going to inherit all these subjects anyways. So it's not like we have to annex anybody. We can kind of just like, you know, keep adding more and more to the HRE so that when we form it, it's kind of just like free land that we're going to be given. So eventually I think we even push over to like, you know, Lithuania and a little bit more into Hungary and just kind of like the further and further we go. I don't really go south or anything, mostly just to the right. We actually annexed the Teutons in one war because, again, that CV is so powerful. And that gives us Livonia as well because Livonia is the subject of the Teutons. So, again, just tons and tons of land added to the HRE. I'll note how we build up our nation just a little bit, just in the same sense. I don't really need to explain, I guess, this on every video, but the idea is that you have your capital and then you essentially what I do is like turn everything around your capital into cities, kind of like this. And Bohemia has like really, really good gold value. If you increase control in those specific areas, you get a lot of value. We're also able to use Parliament to change laws to push towards humanist. And again, this is something I do. And if you've watched my videos, it's something I try to do most every campaign because humanist is really important for making stuff your core. Funny enough, though, I want to talk about an issue I run into. And it's the issue of overabundance of subjects. Like I hit the point of like 150 subjects over my capacity. For me, I haven't really gone over my capacity too much. So I'm kind of just like, oh, whatever, I'll just go over my capacity and that doesn't matter, right? So it turns out it matters a lot. Pretty fast, I end up with like negative 43 Diplo rep or something like that. So it's like not like something you can just ignore. I don't really know how to solve this because I can't figure out for a while like how to get rid of subjects. No option to get rid of subjects. So I'm kind of just like scratching my head like, this isn't good. I have negative 40 Diplo rep and way over my subject limit. And I'm like, things are getting bad. That becomes kind of an issue. So I finally figure out how to cancel subjects. You got to go to the subject menu and you like click on a subject and then you can cancel it. My point being is that like, it's not very straightforward how to do it, but that's fine, right? It's more of just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get to the menus yet, right? Like I'm still learning the game. So, and I've never had a situation where I would like need to cancel subjects. So, but I finally figured it out. And interestingly enough, there's no penalty for canceling subjects. Like in EU4, I think it's like negative 25 prestige. It's like negative 25 prestige, I think, in EU4, but there's no penalty in EU5 for doing so. So I start just kind of like canceling subjects like as much as I can, but I can't really do it fast because this is one complaint I have about EU5 just in general is that whenever you do subject interactions, you have to have diplomats to do subject interactions. And it's like I don't generate diplomats very fast because I'm so far over the limit already. So it's like really I'm in a weird spot where it's like I can only drop a couple subjects a year. This is one frustration or this is one pain point I have is that diplomats, I guess imagine EU4 and let's say that you like revoked or something, right? And you wanted to like divert trade. Well, that would take you years to do in EU5 because every one of those divert trades would be a diplomat action. Like you can imagine how long that would take, right? So that's kind of how it is, and I don't love that. I'd like to be able to send like a mass message out or something, right, to my subjects. We're going to change the laws, and they're going to, like enable scuddies or something, right? But anyhow, that's just one thing I don't love. But maybe they'll change it. Who knows? But it's really, really hard to cancel these subjects because I'm already over my limit. And I'm paying max money for diplomatic spending as well because this increases your diplo capacity. So there's not really much. Like I've kind of min-maxed my capacity as much as I could already. And then I'm like over the limit. So anyhow, my point being is that, we learned a little bit of a lesson here that we can't go over the subject limit and it's causing us a lot of issues like negative 40 diplo rep. If you play EU4, it's like having negative 40 diplo rep in EU4. You can just imagine that's really not going to be ideal, right? Like we're not getting voted for anymore. Every single one of my subjects is disloyal, like all 150. So we kind of have to figure it out and we're like, oh, this is really bad, right? And we're losing money now because our economy was heavily based upon our subject income. So on top of all this at the same time, we're losing money. So we finally figured that all out. Eventually, we're able to kind of cancel a bunch of subjects. And I figure if they're already in the HRE, I can cancel the subjects like, no harm. I'm going to form the HRE later anyways. It's not a big deal. Just a couple things to note about the authority, because I haven't talked a lot about the reforms, and I don't really need to talk a lot about the reforms. They're working on these a lot, and things are going to change. But the one thing that I think is pretty crazy is that your biggest source of authority is you can get 0.3 from your ruler's skill. So it's like really kind of RNG-ish, but also you get a lot from your dynasty. I'm Bohemia and we have a strong dynasty, so I get a lot of like free points for this. The ruler and dynasty make up probably like 0.5 a month in authority. And the biggest difference of authority is like what my ruler's RNG is like. So my original ruler, when he dies, like I was getting a lot of authority, but when I get a new ruler, he has worse stats and it's like a significant decline, right? So let's say I go from plus 0.3 to plus 0.1 because my ruler is not as good for a while, right? To me, this just feels really RNG because, depending on what stats your ruler gets and that sort of thing, could be like really good or really bad. We get to like 1402, and that's when the Hussite situation happens. Essentially, I can't go Hussite, right? Because I'm would lose the emperorship. So it's like I don't really have a choice. And so doing this is pretty destabilizing for me. It puts your nation into like kind of like a civil war type situation. You get really bad rebels, lots of rebels. But at this point, I have a pretty large standing army, and my nation's really not that big, right? Like I have a standing army here, whatever, right? You can imagine, and just like it's not that hard for me to like deal with the rebels. I've also deleted all the forts. I think you only start with one fort anyways, though. Pretty soon later, I don't remember when this happens, but sometime later we get the option to like have this, I think it's like a historic Hussite leader. And there's like 3 options. One is go Hussite. 2 is that you take the leader that you get, but you don't go Hussite. Hurts you in other ways. Like it makes it so you're not good at converting and things like that. Like your ruler itself. The point of me explaining this is that the ruler is like really, really good, right? And before I mentioned that the ruler skill is really important. And one thing to point out too is there's a parliament choice to get +3 to all your ruler stats. The point being is that really, really kind of strong. You don't go Hussite, but you take this leader that's super good. Like, I'm going after like Denmark because he's got HRE land. I'm going after like Naples because they've got some HRE land and that sort of thing as well. So I'm kind of trying to do my best to keep the authority good. But moving on into the third age. So, you know, being like 1437 now. I guess the things of note in this age are we get access to hegemons, which isn't going to be that important for us right now, but it's going to be important later because we're going to get the cultural hegemon, which remember lets us culture convert regions or sorry, it's areas. I always get the things mixed up. But for example, let's say that normally you could culture convert one group of provinces here, whereas with the cultural hegemon, you could do all of Brandenburg at the same time. So it's like really, really effective. Similarly to this mechanic is kind of how it works early game when you have integrate province versus later in the age of absolutism, you get integrate area. What I don't like about this while we're on the topic is that, for example, integrate area, I could do that like with a bunch of different diplomats later, where you can never otherwise do that. Like you can never culture convert areas like that, which I don't really like because I wish you had access to that. You know, you can't core stuff really that great in the later parts of the game. But anyhow, that's just a little bit of a thought there. But anyhow, so we're pick up the cultural hegemon and the mill hegemon. And I think we also get the diplo hegemon, which the reason why the only thing that's like nice about this gives you war score cost, and then you can walk through people's land. This gives you that, you know, integrate area that I said. And then diplo actually gives you influence, like from EU4. In the EU5, if you want to influence a nation, you have to have the diplo hegemon. I think that the hegemons come too fast and they snowball the player really hard. It's something that I wish was just a little bit like nerfed, I want to say. The only hard part about the hegemons, getting them in itself, is that you have to be a great power. So there is like a little bit of a barrier to entry. But once you're a great power, it's, you know, you're kind of just, it's very easy for you to, you know, be the best or something. I guess the only one that's kind of hard to get is the diplo hegemon because like other people have a lot of diplo rep and it's not super accessible. But like I feel like it should be a little harder to get the hegemons, just in my opinion. Or maybe they shouldn't even be accessible until a little bit of a later age. It's like 1495-ish. We're going to pass this law that is that it's like the second to last reform, and it's like revoke the privilege, where people have to take oaths of loyalty or they leave the HRE. And I actually get kind of stuck on this because a bunch of people, like I'm just like, I don't know who, but like a bunch of people like leave the HRE. It's weird because I can't really figure out why. Like I go back to the save and I try to like load it and like try to figure out why these people are like leaving the HRE. It was mostly like a little bit of Italy and then some of like Netherlands. And so I tried to like go back and improve relations with these people, and that didn't seem to fix it. They did just like always left the HRE. So I was just like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. So I don't really know why these people are leaving the HRE, but I kind of just like, I'm like, okay, it's fine. Just to know, whenever you pass the revoke, it's like now you're getting double authority. So it's like super, super fast, like the last reform. The last reform does cost 90 authority, and the second to last one costs 75. I still think the reforms are too fast, though. I think that, I kind of mentioned this before, I think that you should have to deal with the Reformation. I revoked around 1502, which is very similar to how fast I revoke in EU4, but I've always thought that's too fast in EU4. So it's kind of like, yeah, I think we end up actually forming the HRE in 1502. What's really weird is that even though those other nations left the HRE, like I still just get all that land. I don't really know if this is intended. I imagine it's probably not intended. But anyways, so we formed the HRE, and it's like this kind of like giga big HRE, right? Because we've been adding all these provinces over here to the HRE, like all, you know, on this side of the map. It's kind of like a massive version of the HRE. Like we have all of Italy, we get Venice, things like that, right? So it's weird because like in EU4 you wouldn't get Venice, right? But in this game, like you get basically the only thing you don't get in Italy is Naples and the Pope. You get everything else. During the last, I don't know, probably 20 years, I ran into that problem with having too many subjects. And I guess I could have dropped subjects to add more, but I didn't really feel like doing that. So it's like 1490 and I'm just like chilling. I'm just collecting money. So I ended up saving 25,000 ducats into the formation of the HRE. We now enter a scenario where it's like we're in a disaster. We made a save here and we have to reload a bunch of times to figure out what to do. I have 25k ducats, and the first month that I'm the HRE, I lose 10,000 ducats to food. Like, I'm gonna go bankrupt. I can't support this. Like, I was making maybe 300 months before. Now I'm losing 1,500 a month. Like, I do not have the means to fix this either. So I'm kind of like in a scenario where I'm like, I'm gonna go bankrupt, and everyone's gonna revolt, and then I'm gonna like completely collapse as an empire. I have to like reload the save and try to figure out what to do with my 25,000 ducats to like try to fix the problem. And luckily, I saved a lot of money for this point, because if I didn't save money for this point, I don't think I could have handled it. So I tried different things. Like first, I tried to upgrade food RGOs. So I'm like, okay, if I invest like 20,000 into food RGOs, then maybe that will work. And this actually just doesn't work because it takes too long for the pops to get promoted to actually work in those food places, and it takes like a year to even build whatever RGO that I upgraded, or to upgrade it. So even though I try to do this, it just doesn't really work. So I try to reload again, and I'm like, maybe I need to build trade buildings so I make more money from trade. Or I try a bunch of different things. I'm like, maybe I need to make more money. So I'm like, okay, I build like a ton of profitable stuff. It's just like nothing's solving the issue though. I tried building like a bunch of bailiffs at one point. I'm like, maybe if I have more control, that'll work. But I'm just kind of like scratching my head, like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to solve this problem. So I finally come to the correct answer, I suppose, is that I spend all 25,000 deleting cities. It costs 100 per city. So you can imagine I've deleted a lot of cities, right? 250 cities that I've just deleted. This is actually very, very tedious. If I'm being honest, you just like each province and delete. Like, I'm like, I wish there was a way to, I would advocate for like a city macro builder. And I'd advocate this not just for removing, but building cities is it's a one at a time thing. I delete every city. Now I'm only losing like 300 a month, which is still not good, but it's not 1,500 a month. We're starting to go into debt, but it's not like crazy, crazy bad. I think we can take like 80,000 loans total, and we end up at like 30,000 loans, but everything's like, kind of stabilizing. But the way that I really start fixing the problem is that I call Parliament and raise taxes really high. By the way, I'm getting a ton of rebels during this time too, because I have a bunch of land that's not cored, right? Because I've only cored my own land. Before I mentioned that assimilate area, that's going to come into play huge here, because I'm basically like using all of my cabinet actions. Like one of them is integrating like a larger area like this, and then the other ones are kind of just integrating like little stuff, maybe like this, maybe something like this, right? They're integrating like smaller stuff, and then I have my big cabinet action assimilating. So I'm basically assimilating all the culture I can to check. You get 20 control for coring something and only 5 for integrating. Slowly, I also start building lots of food RGOs, and I'm kind of just like relying on the Parliament boost. And what's nice is that a lot of times I'll get events where I'll get like a ton of money. Like I'll get like, I don't know, like 15,000 ducats or something, because I'm a big nation. So the events, how events kind of scale in EU4 to like, they're acting like I'm a rich nation because I have so much land. But I definitely have to like avoid events that would lose money though, because it'd be the same thing. I would lose like 15,000. So, but like there's an event that's like, oh, you can get -10 nobility satisfaction for a lot of money. And I'm like, so anytime I can do that, I'll do something like that. But anyway, so yeah, Parliament events and all that sort of thing are kind of like how I'm able to fund my bailiffs, which are obviously going to be very helpful. Over time, I'm just coring stuff, right? As I mentioned, I'm going around with my guys. And by the way, I push humanists very hard. So I'm really good at culture conversion. Like I can probably culture convert an area within just a few years. This whole process of restabilizing my nation, it takes me 50 years of kind of like rebuilding my nation. And it's actually really interesting gameplay, because it's like very like, economy focused. I'm literally going to no wars, and I'm just like building up my nation. I'm trying to like not go bankrupt. I'm fighting a lot of rebels. I formed the HRE, but now I'm actually going to have to take control of the HRE, and that takes me 50 years. The biggest part of fixing my economy comes in the 1500s. And I figure out kind of like, I don't know if I want to call it a meta, but I figure out how to make like an insane amount of money in the 1500s. And that's with a cabinet action called reduce inflation. And what this means is that you have a slider for minting, and the more you mint, the more that it costs you inflation, right? But now, so before I was like here, but now I can go to like here. So I'm able to mint like crazy hard without being inflated because of the cabinet action, and actually promote the cabinet person to the head of the cabinet, and that gives them like an extra bonus. I have so many characters from this point on that every single one of my cabinet actions is like a 99, meaning it's like super, super effective, because I have so many characters from here and out, because I have so many people, right? I don't know what I have, but I'm sure it's like, I don't know, 50 million population or something, right? So I have an insane amount of characters that every single advisor that I ever employ from here in the rest of the game is like 99 or 98 or 100. So obviously that's pretty handy. The point being is that we have an insanely good minting advisor, and then we make him the head of cabinet. And we're also throughout the campaign stacking cabinet efficiency. This is the modifier that we're really going after. And so basically, this kind of stacks with that humanist idea where we're like even better at culture converting, or we're even better at stabilizing my nation, right? We literally have been like the last 50 years have just been like stabilizing our nation, mostly using our cabinet actions for culture conversion. The 1500s, they feel really good because it's where you can say goodbye to levies because your standing armies are big enough that you no longer need levies to support. So as soon as we get our like the professional armies version of the fourth age, so I don't know, maybe around 1550, like all during this time, we don't need to use levies anymore. But that also means that we can change laws. Like we can give peasants laws that will make them happier because we don't need their levies, right? There's like certain laws that are like, negative 25% levies from the peasants or something, right? So we're able to do a bunch of these laws now because we don't need levies. And so we're kind of leaning into that. I think we're in the third age, not the fourth. I think technically when I said ages 1 to 2, it would be ages 0 to 1. We're talking about 1537 to 1637, just so there's not any confusion. I'm super, super strong now. I make a ton of money. And I've actually changed a law that was super useful. There's a law that has to do with minting. And I had it on unrestricted import. But instead of doing that, I changed my law to ban exporting gold. Because when you do this, it makes it so you can get more from minting. So I'm really going into that whole like minting thing. Gold is my number one income. This is more income than what I get from taxing the peasants, more income from trade. So like this is literally my number one source of money is gold and silver, just so you guys understand. Or I guess in general, I would just say minting. From here, we make like a ton of armies. And the idea is that, okay, we're going to be in the age of absolutism. I go Lutheran. Catholic just sucks. Like Lutheran's better because I know they have 5 war score cost as one of their like aspects, just like they do in EU4, by the way. There's something in the Lutheran religious aspect. I don't remember the name of it, but the important part is that gives you like -5 rebel threshold. And there's another law that I unlocked during this time that gives another -5 rebel. I don't know, something like pops join rebel, something like this. The point being is that we have a really good modifier for like rebels, like population joining rebels. So essentially it's like, just keep like a understanding of how rebels work. Let's say that this is zero satisfaction, and they can join the rebellion at a certain level and then leave at a certain level. I don't know the numbers exactly, but let's say that if they have like, -20%, then they could join the rebellion. But to get them out of the rebellion, you would need 20. So it's like kind of hard to get them out of the rebellion once they start rebelling. But as long as they don't start rebelling, you kind of don't have an issue, right? So what this number is doing is it's making the threshold for them to join the rebellion higher. Instead of maybe -20, again, I don't really know the numbers, but now it's like -30, right? So it's like the kind of the threshold for the rebels to even start spawning now is much higher. And the reason I say this is because from here on out, I can just take land. I'm kind of like in this world conquest mindset now, right? Like I want to try what world conquest would look like. And I don't have the capacity to like core everything, like integrate everything, right? So from here on out, I just take land and I don't core it at all. Like, can I just imagine like, oh, like I'm invading France or something, right? Or I'm invading like England, or I'm invading like Iberia. And I'm not going to core these provinces. I'm just going to leave them not integrated. And I won't get rebels. I mean, you guys can decide how you feel about that. But it's essentially like I'm immune to rebels. I don't have to core stuff. In fact, I don't even try to core stuff. All I do is build bailiffs on those provinces that I acquire. So what I'm saying is that I can take as much land as I possibly can in wars, and there's no negative consequence of doing so. Like I'm not getting a lot of value. I'm getting a little value because, again, these aren't cored or integrated. So maybe I'm getting like 20 control at the best from a bailiff. But I'm not getting a ton of value from conquering like France and all these places. I don't really need a lot of value because I'm pretty rich anyways, right? And I have like a large army now. At least 250,000 standing army. This is to the point where you would probably like quit your campaign. You're so strong that there's no one that could stand against you. But again, I'm trying to go for kind of like a world conquest. So of course I'm going to continue playing. There's a button called like mass build, which is really useful. But the problem is that you can't like build all. You have to like click it individually. What's funny is that it lets you build as fast as you can click. So if you have an auto clicker, it builds like super, super fast. Would I like the build all button? Of course, but it's not like too bad with the auto clicker. I'll need like weaponry, and then I'll just build like 1,000 weapon workshops or something, right? Because I'll be sitting on like, something like 200,000 gold. so I can just invest like ridiculous amounts of money into those things. My army is so big, I'll often run out of like leather or gunpowder or just whatever, and then I'll react to that situation by like mass producing the whatever thing I was missing. So anyways, the way that I kind of like Conquest works from this point forward is that I call Parliament. I get like 3 to 4 claims from Parliament, and I don't really care that Parliament fails. I don't even care what that, I don't even pay attention to what I'm debating. I just pick the nobility one because it's the highest percent. It starts with the highest percent, right? I'll fail the debate every single time, but I'll get like 3 to 4 claims in the process, and then I will like attack in every direction, like you know, like kind of like this. Like you can kind of imagine, like I'm spreading out and I'm attacking. And these wars, again, like I really hope they change this, but it's not like I'm really fighting people at this point. I'm just sieging forts. So many forts, hundreds of forts. They have obviously no chance against me. They have like levies versus the biggest professional army the world's ever seen. So that those things are always topped. But the point being is that I try to avoid things that would lose a lot of stability because it's very, very expensive. That kind of explains a little bit what we're doing. I'll say the combat is very dull, and it's a world conquest. It's tedious. That's kind of a given, right? Like, you're to the point where you should probably, like a normal sane person wouldn't keep playing, right? But so we're kind of just like invading France, invading England, invading Spain, invading Novgorod, those types. So it's a lot of different conquests at a lot of times. I guess most of the times I'm actually just declaring 2 wars in one direction. So I'll do like, let's say I do a war with like France, but then I'll co-belligerate like a bunch of people. So maybe like 2 wars in this way. And then by the time those wars are done, it's been 5 years and I can call the next parliament. And then it's just like a cycle, right? So I'll do that, and then the truces will be up, and I'll go back over on somewhere else. So it's kind of like that. But the combat's very tedious, and there's so many forts, like in the sense that like they need to fix this. It's miserable. But I find out that the most effective way for me to win these wars is to delete all my artillery and just go straight infantry with every single stack so that I can assault everything. That's just kind of like what I figure out is the most effective way because there's so many forts. And I'm kind of to the point where like no one would coalition me anyways, right? I'm too strong. I say that, but actually like the entire Sunni world coalitions me later, but it doesn't really matter. So yeah, we even have a navy at this point. So just to make a note, because we have to invade England, right? This is something I actually kind of complain about, and we'll talk about it later, is that Conquest is actually harder as the game progresses, which is reverse of EU4. So it's like, it's harder to take land progressively, and it's harder to win wars progressively as the campaign goes. Every age has a modifier that makes battles less important. By the time you hit the 1700s, battles are like worth nothing. Where in the start, they're worth like 25% war score. And then in the end, they're worth like 0.5% of a war score, right? So it's like drastically, as the game progresses, battles become less and less valuable. And I'm not a fan of this personally because I like the idea, like in EU4, it feels like you're able to conquer more land as the game progresses. But, and also things like control and tax. Tax base is a huge thing, but control and tax base affect war score cost a lot. So it's literally harder to take land the longer the campaign goes. So it's kind of like reverse. I don't like this. It's like I'm not able to take more land progressively. And I even am stacking war score costs as much as I can, but it doesn't matter. But anyways, so the war score from battles is like, it feels really good early on to have that. But of course, the bad thing about that is that it doesn't really matter because you can't take land if you don't have the forts. Again, I hope they change this as well. I think that you shouldn't have to siege every single fort to be able to take that land, especially when there's so many forts that it becomes like, I don't know, it's very, very tedious is all I can say. But, and yeah, I find out though that the best method is to just stack infantry and no other unit. And by the way, it's so painful to build up these armies. Like I probably spend like 20 to 30 minutes at some point just building armies because there's no template builder, right? Like it's like the best way that I found to build armies is you build like a couple stacks of one, and then you like recruit another 29 to these stacks. I wish they had an army builder. I think it's something that will probably be a DLC feature, but I don't know, right? Who knows? I'm not the developer, but I'm like, it feels bad that there's no template. Did try a stack that was like 20 infantry stacks and 10 cannon stacks. And this wasn't bad, but it just wasn't as effective as spam assaulting. Like in the way that I would spam assault, let's say that I have like 50,000 guys, right? So I'd run in there and then I would just assault and assault. And what's crazy is that when I come back, let's say that I come back with like 20,000 guys, they instantly re-recruit to 50,000 on the month tick. Like in EU4, you'd have to wait like months and months, but for some reason, it's like 1 month tick and it's back to 50K ready to assault again. So you can kind of see why I use this technique, because I can literally just get my guys back and then go back to assaulting, right? Over and over. The only caveat is that I have to march all the way back to where I have the, buildings that actually have the manpower producing. Cause like over here, this is rural area, right? If I'm invading France, like stuff over here is all rural. So what I end up doing is like I tell my guys to walk to Bohemia and then walk back, like in a loop. Like I shift click. Assault wise, it's just better to have straight infantry. And if you have the manpower to sustain it, then yeah, just assaulting everything is probably the way. I will say that later on I fight Egypt because Egypt's like a really really strong. Egypt's like the new Ottomans in EU5, and I actually get destroyed with infantry only, and I have to like pull in some stacks that actually have cannons to be able to deal with him. But other than Egypt, that's the only time that I really have an issue with infantry only. Because Egypt is just like, man, like they're insane, and they actually have land like in like Serbia and stuff. Like I don't know, they're cracked. So I get to the point where I probably have like at least like 1 million to 2 million manpower. So the age of absolutism comes around, and I think the age of absolutism actually happens a little bit before we start doing our mass conquests. But it's important to note that the age of absolutism has like, I don't remember exactly what it is, like it's like something and then absolutism, right? Like it's another value that gets added. And you're gonna get a disaster where you either like curtail your estates or you go towards the this one, right? And I think that libertism is the way. Like absolutism is just completely bad. When the disaster happens, I choose to not curtail the estates because I think that it's just stupid. Because like absolutism doesn't do anything valuable basically, but this one does. I think absolutism is bad, at least from the the sense of world conquest or whatever. And this is way better because this is like a couple things. Basically, absolutism gives you money from trade, but at the cost of rebels and like negative estate satisfaction, right? Because you have to like curtail your estates and make everyone mad. And for me, that's just like not worth it, especially because think of it like my nation is super happy most of the time because I literally have like almost all privileges that are not too bad granted away. So I probably have like close to 10 privileges for some of the estates. Anyways, this one over here, liberalism, will give more of that modifier we talked about earlier, the negative pops join the rebellion thing. And on top of that, it makes parliament only cost 40 to do a CB, right? So now I can get more CBs from parliament at the same time because it only costs 40 per. And the estates are happier, right? So it's like, it's just great. Like it's basically like, why would ever go absolutism? And I don't like that from a gameplay perspective, that absolutism just feels like the wrong choice. But I don't like this, that absolutism doesn't feel valuable. But it literally just gives you like crown power. That's like the main thing that you get out of it. And that just doesn't, like I already have like 35% crown power anyways. So I have plenty, right? It's like I don't really need more of this. The disaster happens and I pick this side and there's no rebels. There's nothing like bad at all. I played absolutism before and it's the opposite, right? Like you have to curtail your estates and eventually it'll lead to making a lot of money from trade later, but it's just really not worth it, I thought. So anyways, that's kind of the main thing that's relevant here. And I think that this might be helpful too, because whenever we take Sunni land, we still don't get rebels. And by the way, anytime I can, I'm trying to get tolerance of the heretics, right? Like I'm trying to build my nation in a way that I don't have to deal with rebels, because rebels will slow me down a lot. But I basically never have to fight rebels from like 1500 on. Is this okay? I don't know. Like that's another question, right? Like, should I be able to take land and not even core it and have no issues with rebels at all? I mean, you be the judge. That's just how it works. Absolutism feels like this really big power spike in EU4, and it's not that in EU5. That's just like kind of the reality. It's just kind of like idea that I have that I don't like is that like you're strongest here, and as the game progresses, you get less and less strong. Other nations get more strong. They have more tax value, which means it's harder to take land. So anyhow, we come into the late 1700s. I wanted to have like all of Europe by the last age because I was relying on imperialism, and that's going to come in the last age. So I was like, okay, if I can get all of Europe, then I can come in with imperialism and have a good shot at a world conquest. Now, unfortunately, there's a glitch in the game I have right now where I can't, as an empire, I'm not allowed to use imperialism. So I kind of give up on my world conquest at that point because I'm like, oh, like, I needed that because imperialism is a negative 50% cost to take stuff in war. And I was kind of relying on that to be the way that I complete the world conquest. But I can say that I have all of Europe, and that includes Iberia and England, and I have like all of Russia. I think I have 250 million pops at the end. Just to explain imperialism, it's actually something you have to fabricate. Like you have to send your spy out, and it's not like the imperialism of EU4 where you can just attack, right? You'd have to like build spy networks. But again, I can't do it because I'm an empire, and I know this isn't working as intended because I saw someone else post about it, and they like already have it resolved in the more recent build that's their internal build. So it is what it is, right? It's just like it doesn't work in the version I played, so I can't really shoot for the world conquest beyond this point. But I do want to try out some revolution mechanics because I'm here anyways. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about the revolution and the way that that felt. Oh, and just so you guys know, I have to turn my settings to the lowest possible to like get very good frames at this point. And I have a top end build. I don't really know. Again, that might not be information that really is that relevant. I'm just kind of putting it out there. But if I play in very low settings, I get great FPS. If I don't, like, it's playable because I usually play in the highest settings and it's playable, but you start to see a slowdown of speed. So I would rather just have like more game speed than visuals. So anyhow, just like as a side note, like yes, the performance is kind of rough in the age of revolutions. Like lower settings fixes the problem completely, but it also looks terrible. Not terrible, but you get what I mean. Like it looks when you're playing on very high settings and then going to very low settings, it's yeah. But last thing we'll talk about, of course, because I can't really continue the world conquest with just kind of the way that things are working, is the Age of Revolution, the Revolution disaster. And I don't really like this for a lot of different reasons, but we'll talk about how it works. And basically, the way that it works is that if you're taxing 50% of what you could tax, then you're basically going to get the revolution. So meaning like, let's say that you could have 30% total tax on the peasants, right? Well, if you're taxing them over 16%, then you're gonna start the revolution. Or you're gonna like meet the conditions similar to how EU4 works. Like and it has like a chance per month of spawning. Right. So basically like it's easy to avoid if you want. And maybe it would be a thing that if other people get the revolution, it spreads to you easier. I don't really know quite. But anyways, so the revolution though, it took the most valuable of my land and turned it into rebels. Like basically like all of my value turned into rebels, right? Or like broke free and turned into rebels. And I made a save so I could try both sides of the revolution too, like where I become a revolutionary and that sort of thing. Because I made it this far, I might as well see what this is all about. Fighting the rebels is not super hard, but it's also kind of hard because they have so much money because there's so much value in the provinces that they just took. But I implement the strategy that I use when I was the Timurids, which is kind of a funny strategy, that I just raise all the levies that I have in my nation, and then I tell them to carpet siege, because it's a civil war, which means that if you occupy the province, that area just like goes over to you. The idea that when you occupy the province, it like is instantly yours. So I basically hire all the levies and I just tell them all the carpet siege. And like even though a bunch of them are gonna die, there's too many of them to like. There's no forts here because I deleted them all. So basically, it's like super easy to win this. I just like send in a bunch of like stacks like crazy. Like I lose a ton of battles, but it doesn't really matter because some of them are making it through. So I literally just tell like I don't know, like just imagine me sending like 1,000,000 guys and they're on carpet siege. Like I think it's literally like 200 little stacks of guys are just coming in. And it's just like the AI can't like even it doesn't matter how strong they are. They can't like it's over within like months. That's how that plays out. And what's crazy though is obviously it's really destabilizing to my nation because I just lost the land. But whenever you have a civil war or anything like that, you lose all control. So I have like zero control now in my entire area. Like all my value is now completely uncontrolled. I have it back, but I'm not making. I'm losing like thousands a month now because it's going to take a while for the control to tick back up. During the revolution, there's like a plus 25 to rebels join threshold. Now I'm going to have like the worst rebels crisis of my life to the extent that like you would rather just reload the game and not let the revolution happen because you're going to be fighting like an insane amount of rebels now. I think I have like 82 groups of rebels that are going to be on their way. And unfortunately, you can't like fix this again because of the way that I explained the rebel thing earlier, right? Where it's like I would have to get above a certain point and I can't. So I would have to fight just like an insane amount of rebels. But what's crazy is that after I finish it, it can happen again in 5 years, it says. There's a 5-year cooldown and then it could happen again. So I'm like, that seems like crazy, right? Like I don't know. I don't think I wasn't very impressed with that the whole revolution because it's pretty avoidable. Like, oh, you just need to not tax your people a certain percentage. And it kind of leaves your nation in like this broken state, like because the rebels aren't going to go away. The last thing we'll cover in this campaign is that I went ahead and reloaded the save and adopted the revolution, or like joined the revolution. And before I did though, I deleted all my troops because like I had like 1,000,000 troops like that. There's no way I could win, right? Although I will say when you do get like some buffs for morale, I think you get like 10% morale. I can't remember offhand, but you get military buffs, right? When you become revolutionary, just like in EU4. But that's kind of all. You just get like military buffs, and then you would kind of enter a situation where you have to go through 10 years and certain things happen. But what's interesting is that I notice when I'm revolutionary, so I'm like revolutionary the Holy Empire or Holy Roman Empire, right? But I'm a new nation. Remember before I said I had like tons of estates? I have nothing granted to estates anymore. It's almost like my nation's fully absolute now. I have like 70% absolute or crown power now because I have 0 privileges granted. So it's kind of weird because it's like even though you didn't go absolute, you could just do this at this point if you wanted to, and then you're basically absolute anyways. You're not the HRE anymore. You're this new rebellion factor, I guess. So it's fine. I'm not like saying it's terrible or something, but it is what it is. But one thing I noticed that's interesting is that I looked at my formables and now I can form Europa now, which is interesting because I couldn't before. And I figured out why is because there's a modifier called like Rome Reborn for the HRE, and part of that modifier is that it won't let you form other nations. So right, I can't form Europa before, but now that I see a shiny new button, I'm like, ooh, I want to do this. Basically, what I do is just I carpet siege with everything, and then I switch into the HRE that exists, and I keep just disbanding their levies over and over because like it would be actually pretty hard. And I'm kind of just more to the point where like, I want to see what happens, and I'm ready to wrap up the campaign. So we're able to eventually, get all the land. I delete all the forts because I actually had a ton of forts outside of my capital region because I was just lazy and didn't delete the forts when I conquered the rest of Europe and stuff. Now, I'm going to talk about things that I don't like too about this revolution. So you go through this like 10-year period, and during that time, like you're revolutionary, you can actually like spread your ideas to other nations. But also like the rest of the world is struggling with like you're the revolutionary target, and the other parts of the world it's kind of like EU4, but it seems like really devastating for the AI actually. Like like the Mamluks or like Egypt's getting like half their nation is occupied by rebels now, and this is happening all over the world, like even places that I can't see. It's telling me over in like, Genper that this is happening. So it's like, it's definitely like massively affecting the rest of the world. And there's special interactions that I can use to like support the rebels or like, start a rebellion somewhere else, right? So I have like a couple different interactions that I can use. I get like, it's like a situation that I am given for being the revolutionary target. The disappointing part that I have with this, that there's a CB that they can use against me for Crush the Revolution, but there's no CB for me to like spread the revolution like there is in EU4, which I was kind of disappointed in because I was like, oh, well, imperialism doesn't work. Maybe I could actually make this work and finish World Conquest with Spread the Revolution CB, but there is no Spread the Revolution CB. So yeah, I was a little disappointed by that, if I'm being honest. So my final tag that I form into is called the Revolutionary Europa Republic. They're actually a really nice color. So that basically wraps up my campaign. Again, I was a little bit, I guess the final thoughts are like, I don't like the power curve that the game feels like, where it's like you're strongest at the start of the game as far as conquest goes. And again, this has to do with things like the AI has more tax base and control. So it's harder to take land as the game progresses because of that. And also it's harder to win wars because you get no war score from battles anymore. This is just random, but I feel like maybe they should let the HRE form into Europa. The HRE has a modifier that says cannot form to other nations, but they're tier 4. So I guess maybe Paradox intended that you can't do that, except that if you go revolutionary, you become a new nation that doesn't have that modifier anymore. And that's why I was able to do it, because when I'm revolutionary, the Holy Roman Empire, I'm a new nation and I don't have that Rome Reborn modifier anymore that's preventing me from forming into other nations. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and let me know what you'd like to see in the future.